Well, welcome to the fundamentals of real estate. I'm your host, Angela Dillmon, here with the Dillmon Group at Keller Williams Realty Chesterfield. And this is my wealth building partner,
Glen Calvin and Gill Mortgage.
Yes, and this is our expert buyer's agent, Josh Gulledge, joining us again this week to continue our buyer series. So, do we have a question of the day, Glenn?
We do have a question of the day. So other than screening for defects, what are some other things that the realtor is going to do when you're looking at a house?
All right, so do you really need the realtor when you're
we decided
viewing,
we do.
Right?
Yes.
We talked about screening for defects before, but are there other things that you do? Because now in this process, we're really excited because we're actually in a house now. We're looking at a house, right? Mm-hmm. So Josh, tell us a little bit about, I guess, maybe the art of viewing, right?
Yeah.
How about that?
That's a good way of saying it. So, yeah, I mean, there's always those homes that you screen for humongous defects, which we've done in prior podcasts.
Right.
But sometimes there's really nothing like major wrong with the house. It's,
mm-hmm.
You kind of transition to the part that does it fit for the family that you're showing it to.
Right.
And that could be just as valuable as screening for problems, right? If they buy a house that doesn't fit for their family, well, that's just it's a waste, right? And
right.
You'd think, listening, you're like, boy, who would buy a house that doesn't fit what you want? But it's
People do.
Extremely common.
Yes.
And I see it all the time. So, so part of it's just visualizing. Sometimes buyers get hung up on home improvements. So, like, have maybe even a brand new kitchen, but one appliance is older.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, don't discard the whole kitchen because the stove is older. Like, get a new stove. It's a couple $100. So it's helping them function through that. And then could be bigger repairs, like, hey, it's not open enough for me. Well, that you could remove this wall. I've seen the floor plan. I've seen it done hundreds or thousands of times. So, I know this wall can come out because I've seen it.
Right.
And then they're like, oh, wow, that would really open up the space a lot. So
right. So you're really brainstorming on home improvements that either A, make it more livable, fit their family needs better, right? Or what their likes and their wants.
Yep.
Or maybe even makes it more valuable. Easy ways to make things valuable. So what are some of the easy tips like you give people like, oh, you could really transform this kitchen without ripping it out?
Yeah, so I think that everybody watches HGTV a little bit. And so I think their first, reaction is, I got to gut it to the studs and start over.
Then you'd have to call Glenn, you'd have to get a loan and all this other stuff, right?
And so sometimes it's just a matter of like, okay, put the sledgehammers down.
Right.
What do you not like about the kitchen? And sometimes it's as simple as it's not granite countertops.
Right.
Go get new granite countertops.
Right.
Or sometimes the cabinets are really good oak cabinets that you could paint. So,
and we have good painters. And sometimes people put 2 to 3 times the cost of what it may cost to paint a cabinet or put a counter in. And since we know that cost, we can say, hey, we have expert guys that do this. And this is generally about the range you're looking in. And people are surprised because if you don't do it every day, you're definitely doing the double to triple the actual cost of something. Yeah. This is why we tell sellers to go ahead and do these things, because this is what buyers do in their head. And if you don't have a real good realtor to talk you through it, you might miss an opportunity, and a really great one.
Yeah,
right?
No, I mean, it always comes down to price. And again, when we're talking about, our whole slogan is building wealth and legacies. So, I mean, when you look at it from a lens of 5, 10, 15 years from now, because that's what, we've been helping those people out, right? Sold 10 years ago and helping them now. And you can really see how much wealth they've built. So get into a good plan.
The brainstorm is really super important, because I liken it to kind of like being a patient when you go see the doctor. You go see the doctor and you're the patient and your brain wonks out because your brain gets wonky when you get stressed, right? And even though looking at a house should be a happy moment, it's still just a tad stressful. You're spending money. Usually your budget's going up, right? You're unsure of all the cost of what it's going to cost to maintain this particular home and make the improvements. So there's a little bit of stress involved that wonks the brain. But if you drag somebody along with you to the doctor, they can ask the questions, they can process the information better, they can remind you, and they can sit there and brainstorm with the doctor and ask the doctor questions. And you're like, oh yeah, I didn't think about that. Of course I would have thought about that when I got home.
Yeah.
Right? Well, the other thing is, this is something that you're going to do, 3 or 4 times in a lifetime, maybe. You haven't done it before, and Josh has got that experience, and that's going to be huge because your brain is going to pick up on stuff that mine wouldn't.
Absolutely. So what if I'm in the house, and I kind of like it, but I don't quite like it? Like, there's just something, and you're like, why do these people like this house? Like, this is a perfect house. What's going on? So what happens when I don't quite like it? Like, what are some of the things that it's like almost there, but it's not?
So in my experience, and again, I've shown thousands of homes. I can't even comprehend how many now. So, I've learned that I know these floor plans. I could walk some of them blindfolded. So when I walk into the house, my brain doesn't need to comprehend like what the layout is. But I have learned that, buyers, they're not used to that. So they're walking in a place immediately thinking like, where are the room? Like their brain is processing all that information. So especially, again, I know you're a huge component of staging, so not really the name of the podcast, but if the house is not staged,
it's a little
sometimes
harder.
they have, it's the perfect fit, and I can tell it, but sometimes for them, it's like, they just can't quite wrap their head around how they would use stuff. And I used an example. I had a client, and this was like the perfect setup for a TV. I mean, it had the speakers in the wall, the surround sound, and we walk in and they're like, where would my TV go? And I didn't, thank God at the time I didn't laugh, but I thought they were joking because it was clearly like, that's where your TV goes. But they were serious. And I was like, oh, well, like, you go here and here's your speakers and, do you have a couch and a love seat? And so I kind of like walked through like, what furniture do you have? And then I could literally see it in their eyes like, oh, that would work.
Boom,
like, yeah,
light bulbs went out
here. So now they could visualize what was just an empty room. They could actually visualize how they would use it with the family. And I do the same thing in kitchens, right? So do you guys host? Where do you guys crock pot? Like, are you big family like my family is? And this is the island where you have 10 crock pots and here's your dessert table. Like you really actually have to walk because, big holidays and daily living, like family watching TV, those are the two reasons why people buy homes. I mean, house is too small and they want to do the hosting, or they need a bigger home for their family everyday life.
All right, so let's just say I'm in the house and I'm like, man, I really like this floor plan. I like this house, but I just feel like the bedrooms are too small. Because that's like a common scenario, right?
Yeah, so sometimes buyers will just, and bedrooms is a great example, sometimes buyers just turn houses down for one thing, like bedroom sizes.
Okay.
But then they don't understand that, and this is where the realtor comes in, is it's not going to, the bedrooms aren't just magically going to get bigger the next 10 houses we view. Like, this is a standard size bedroom for the house and price point we're in and location. So I always tell people, imagine a 1,000 square foot home and a 1,500 square foot home. If they had the exact same kitchen size, living room size, family room size, but one had massive bedrooms, it'd be really awkward.
That's not going to happen either.
Right.
And, if you think of the progression of the family, they buy bigger homes because the family gets bigger. They need a bigger kitchen. They need a bigger living room. They need a better dining room. Bedrooms are the last thing to get square footage. So it's just going to be a lot of looking to look for these bigger bedrooms that won't happen. So I try to give them like, hey, this is par for location, price, and size. Like, these bedrooms aren't magically going to get bigger. If anything, it'll be maybe even a little bigger, but not even enough where you would notice if I dropped you in the rooms. You wouldn't be able to like, oh, this
Unless you went up to a higher price or a different location further out.
Right, or go further out, stretch your home. Right.
But yeah, so it could just be stuff like that. Or again, it works with kitchens too. Like, they need a bigger kitchen, and we're in a really big kitchen for that size home. So I just, I don't want to see them just struggle that wheel. And I know we talked about.
Yeah, you get on the gerbil wheel and you just keep going to look for that bigger bedroom and that bigger kitchen. It's never going to happen. So what the realtor's doing here is saving you a lot of time and a lot of hassle and helping you process what's right in front of you, so that you can make quick decisions, good decisions, to move on, to be able to find the home. And so that you're not looking for a year, right? So I know you have a really great...
People look for, this is also a common one, they need a big garage. Well, I show them one, it's an oversized garage with a bump out. And they're like, they need a bigger garage. Like, we are in for a ride, because this is nice. This is a find in and of itself.
Right, this is so uncommon. Right.
So
you have a really great used car scenario that you talk people through this.
Yeah, so I do it on the front end of my buyers' presentations, and then sometimes I remind them in the houses. It's just, if you were going to go buy a car, sure, you could go on the lot and find a car from $20,000 all the way up to probably $200,000. But as you start to give the information, like, oh, I want a truck. Well, the cheapest possible truck is $35,000, but then you need 4 doors and 4-wheel drive. Well, now the cheapest truck on the lot is $45,000. So you kind of know, like, hey, anything less than $45,000, I just can't find it for that.
Right,
So
not going to happen.
you can kind of really narrow down your range of what's important, and then you can decide, am I willing to sacrifice on, again, we're going back to homes, some of the features of the home, or am I willing to sacrifice and spend a little bit more money but get exactly what I'm looking for? So when I put it in that scenario and then show them what's par, like this is standard, I can help you refine this exact home, or I'll tell them features that are really hard to refine. So like, hey, we might find this home with a nicer kitchen, but you're going to lose that garage. It's going to go back down to
and it's really super hard when you walk into the very first one and you like it. I got to tell you that. So let's just say I am in the house and I do like it. Like, what is the first common question that you get? What's the next step? What's the first thought in the buyer's mind when they're like, I kind of like this one. I think I might be ready to make an offer. What happens there?
Yeah, again, a lot of times, sometimes they're just really anxious and they're super excited. They're like, let's go. Like, what's the next? What's the next steps? Like, tell me how to make an offer. Some are a little more reserved, and I actually, because that's part of my job, is I want to make sure that they're not missing up an opportunity just because they don't want to say it. I'll ask them, like, hey, do you like this enough to make an offer?
So what would your first question be, Glenn? If you were in the house and you really liked it, what would your first question to the realtor be?
What's the price? What's it going to take to buy this house? Yeah.
What's it going to take? That's the most common problem.
Yeah, price is definitely probably one of the most common questions.
What's it going to take, especially in this market where there might be multiple offer situation? What's it going to take? So how do you answer? How do you begin to even answer that question? You're standing in the house and you're chatting.
So I typically go through three major terms first, because terms really determine the price.
Oh, so we don't talk about price right off the bat.
Not right off the bat, because the terms dictate the price and how I handle the negotiations. So we'll talk about inspections, so your options on inspections. We'll talk about your options on appraisals and loan, and we'll talk about the difference between a residential sale contract and a special sale contract and how that can help you. So
before we even get to price.
Oh,
that sounds like we're going to have to wait till next week to talk about that.
It's fascinating to me because there's a whole lot in there that I didn't even think about. I'm focused on the house and the price, and I really appreciate Josh is there protecting me. As a layperson, we talked about this before. I built my own house. I've never really had the experience of buying one, so this is fascinating to me. There's so much that you've got in there to protect me. Because what if I do buy the house and then the foundation collapses? Right. What if I do buy the house and it doesn't appraise and I got to come with extra money?
And the great thing, too, is that you don't miss out on an opportunity. Because if you're someone who really processes information, it might take you a week or 3 or 4 days that you don't have in this market to process and try to figure out how can I make that house better, when the realtor can get you there in a very short order and help you not miss opportunities in the market. And how to build wealth through real estate simply by making some simple changes to a house. Doesn't always have to be expensive. I
just love the idea of assembling my team. I've got my realtor, I've got my lender, and they're watching out for me. It's not just about the price. It's keeping me from making a huge mistake.
Yes, so we're going to talk to Glenn more about that next week when we talk about the updated loan scenarios when you do like a house. So
fascinating
thank you for joining us this week. And until next week, hit the like. Give us a little subscribe. Help us spread the word. Share it if you will, if you like it. And we appreciate you listening. See you next week.